starting.
Probably with LCK salary caps, don't you think?
I mean, that would be a Four Horsemen topic personally, but we can do that if you want.
we can touch on it. We can touch on it briefly here, because this news came out yesterday, which is basically there is going to be a soft salary cap with a luxury tax introduced into the LCK. Now, nobody else is going to talk about this because nobody else can be critical about this. We don't know what the number of the salary cap is because they've said that they are going to introduce that quietly later into the rule book. By the way, everybody, I hope this is obvious, but that rule book is not translated into English. So get fucked, everyone else in the world who wants to know what the rules of the LCK are and what the potential cap restrictions are going to be. So we're going to have to, later on down the road when that happens, get some more details and some translations from Korean on that one, because they obviously don't want the rules in other languages because that just enables further criticism, so they will not translate it themselves. Basically what this cap is, to be clear, let me put this right up front for those people who are saying that, oh, the players are going to be hurt like this. No, as we've talked about on the Four Horsemen, the ecosystem is very much benefiting the players right now. The players are getting an overwhelming amount of money, much more than the revenue that is actually generated. LCK teams are not in a good place right now in terms of sustainability. In fact, here's a little nug for you guys. LCK teams, some LCK teams, I'm not going to tell you which ones, have missed franchise payments now. So they are not able to actually pay their franchise fees because of the current situation within the LCK. And now they're trying to push this onto a path of sustainability. Now, this is only possible in Korea because they don't have antitrust laws. They couldn't do this without a players' union negotiating on the other side of the United States. But this is basically how leagues in Korea work. There aren't really players' unions, or not strong ones to my understanding, in traditional sports in Korea. And so they can just kind of unilaterally implement this. Now, we don't know what the exact number of the cap is, but the way that this works is that they are trying to incentivize teams to keep franchise or legacy players. So, for example, if you have played for 3 years with the team, then you receive, basically your salary is reduced by 30%. Not that you get paid 30% less, guys, but your salary is reduced by 30% towards the cap. So let's say a player's getting $1 million and they've been with the team for 3 years. Well, only 700,000 of that would count against the cap, which means that in theory, teams can pay those players more while still having the same cap hit, which helps them maintain those players. Because basically it's saying they can pay them above market value. It's like a super contract in the NBA, right? Duncan, do you know anything about that?
I mean, you could also use the example, like, as far as I know, it's the same in the NFL. Like, it's like you're saying, like, for the max deals and the extensions in the NBA, I think it works the same way as the NFL, where, like, no one can actually pay you more in theory than your team that currently has you if you do the extra deal with them as a way to incentivize it.
Right. So, it's not quite as explicit as that, but because, it's just about a reduction of the cap hit, but it, in theory, would allow you to pay the player more for the same, than another team for the same cap hit. And also, hilariously, they made a faker rule. Did you like this one? Where if you have won 5 LCK titles or 3 international championships, which count as MSI and Worlds, then all of a sudden you can have 50% off their salary cap in cap calculations. And they apparently combine. So if that's true, and you've been at a team for more than 3 years. So apparently, I guess, the thing is, like, only 20% of Faker's salary is going to count against the cap hit because he has an 80% reduction from 30% and 50%. I believe that's how it works. So it's a little rough figuring out the particulars on this, guys, because Riot released it as an article that's been translated from Korean. So I'm not super confident on the details, but I think that is ostensibly how it works. And the only other player, by the way, who would qualify for the 50% reduction in their salary against the cap would be Peanut, who also has 5 domestic titles. But those are the only 2 players that are currently eligible for that. And obviously, like, they had to create a rule to keep Faker within the LCK, because losing him and losing his star power, if someone else, in China or elsewhere was going to pay him an outrageous amount of money, would be quite a bad look for the league.
Well, I'll go through it all. First of all, the idea of a salary cap is something I actually have a massive problem with because it's something that in theory I think is terrible. Like it essentially means as an individual, if you really were, let's imagine, this is hypothetical, let's imagine I actually was 100 times better than the second best player in the world. It's not like look, if functionally impossible, we're doing this theoretically as an abstract because these rules do not at all apply to actual how good you are. They set a hard cap for anyone. Now, there's exceptions like you're saying, but the exceptions are quite clearly created, like Faker, to just edge him in and make it so that he doesn't get lost. So you're already fucking around a bit there, right? Well, first of all, the most crazy thing about that is I can never, ever get my value. I can never actually get an outrageous amount more than the second best guy. In fact, logically, like max deals in the NFL and NBA, it won't even just be that I don't get more. I will have to just get the same as the second best player. In fact, if you know how these leagues work, probably 10 of us are going to be getting that amount. So if I'm like absolutely far away, if I'm Faker in season 3, then spoiler, I can probably only make as much money in season 3 if this had been applied as the 10th best player in LCK. So let's say, like, I don't know, it would be back then, like, I'll make up a random one. Let's say Coco. He was a mid laner. He wasn't the best back then, but let's say I could only make as much as Coco. So that's already bad for me if I'm Faker. If I'm an exceptional player in year 1 or year 2 of my career, this is a bad scenario for me. Now, look, the practicality of why it exists is why I'm not necessarily against it. Because, first of all, unlike a lot of sports, especially American sports, this is a worldwide market. This is one where, I mean, this is why they created with the LPL angle aligned there. The first problem, the second new salary cap, we don't know the numbers yet, is the numbers for the LPL cap are known. In theory, no player is allowed to get more than 1.5 million US dollars a year. And they claim in the past that Knight was getting $6 million a year. I actually don't believe that number at all. But okay, let's say they do report him getting $6 million a year. The problem obviously would be, if it ends up that it's $1 million, say in LCK, then actually now, if Faker wants to make money, or any really other great player, you're actually incentivized to go to LPL. They could get a 500,000 more, which is obviously the real problem. On the one hand, you want to ring fence the amount that you're spending for the LCK teams so they don't go bust. But at the same time, the worst thing ever would be if you lost all your talent. I mean, the analogy would be it wasn't because of salary caps. There's a reason why people who, not often the best, but the second tier of really good EU players would go to LCS and be the stars of the LCS because they could just pay you more. So even though it might not even be the league you want to play in, you do it for the finances and you do it because your career's short. So the problem there is, like, theory is different from practicality. So the reason why practically I'm not against it, and I think it's actually necessary, is because first of all, I mean, I'll just say this. I think the inputs to the LPL specifically, some of them have nothing to do with business. There are literally just billionaires just wasting money there. And as a result, they don't have to run a real business. And whereas you want some of the orgs to actually be real businesses. And then secondly, I'll just say this. I imagine some of the inputs potentially are criminal or come from things like money laundering. I'll just say that. Why not? It's fucking obvious.
I mean,
there you go.
By the way, that has been true in every esport ever for the history of esports, which is that this has been, a money laundering enterprise in a variety of nations for a variety of reasons for a very long time.
And then look, in the sense of hurts them like they make less, obviously it will hurt them, Monte. It will directly hurt players. It won't hurt them in the sense they won't make any money or they make a bad living. That's obviously a different equation. The problem is this. I would even say if you're a player, this is actually good for you in the long run. And here's why. Because if these teams don't pay their franchise fees, or in LCS, they're just leaving or planning on leaving, there won't be someone else to pay you the $3 million in 3 years. So what you want actually is teams to stabilize, most importantly, survive the next year and a half or so of this esports winter. And then there might actually be an industry where, at least, here's the thing, think about it long term. Instead of getting like a large slice of a pie that no longer will exist in 2 years, you're getting a smaller slice of a pie that could exist forever, for 10 years potentially. So 1.5 million might not sound like much if we did like the LPL, but if you could get 5 years of that, that will be better than getting 3 million now and then in a year nothing if it all goes bust and your team fires you. And also, by the way, if teams start going bust, they will be incentivized to break contracts, to bench you, to invoke clause, to do everything they can to not pay, and they won't re-up either. Even if you have all that success, they won't re-up. So the practicality is what almost necessitates this. Then on the whole Faker goes to the LPL thing. The problem is, until we know the number, Faker might well go to the LPL. He wants one last year and loads of money. In fact, that's the reason why I don't like, this is what I do hate. I don't like this part where what the orgs do is they want their cake and to eat it at the same time. time. So we're going to put a salary cap. Oh, yeah, but the rich, the really powerful orgs like T1 and all them, like, we want special accommodations just for us, though. Oh, no, but the thing is, the rules would apply to everyone. Oh, sorry, Guangdong Freaks. Do you not have players with 5 championships or who won? Oh, well, sorry. I guess you just have to pay all the same amount of money, right? But I can then pay a bit extra. So I keep Faker. So even if you come with the same money, salary cap, we can all just make the same bid. No, I can always bid more than you. That's just, I hate grandfathering in general, because all it does is it rewards those who have and punishes those who do not. Whereas the point of the salary cap as well, this is why owners do this, Monty. Salary cap is supposed to help you keep your finances down, but here's the problem when you keep your finances down. You actually have to be as good at me as GMing now. What if you're GMing and you're T1, but you're a bomb and you're hiring fucking Cos and fucking random ass Morgan or whoever, but then I go and I'm Guangdong Freaks, I'm nobody, but I got CV Max, and he goes, you know what? I've got the next shit hot ADC, and I'm getting keen to join, and Kanavi's coming back. What do you want to join my team? I can pay you the same as T1. Oh wait, I can't, because T1 can pay you extra because they have the grandfathered clause. So I hate that in general. I think it's just so slimy. It's like, on the one hand, stable competitive field, everyone, except we get extra ones. And then the one there of like, you won more championships, right? This is one thing that's mental. This is only Koreans would think this makes sense, because they're acting like it was your duty to succeed and win championships, and that in doing so, you've like furthered the LCK, right? No, you just played very good video games in a league. Like, here's the obvious thing about that that's stupid. That means that if fucking Chovy wants to sign a big deal, he can't sign as big a deal as Faker, even though Chovy is better than Faker. That is stupid as fuck. That is actually anti-competitive. And then lastly, just a last parting shot on the way out. I've finished off with the machine gun, throwing the grenades. A little bit of pistol on the way out the door. I'll just say this. The Journalist of the Year is endemic to the Korean scene, and their response to all this was to just ask, like, as if in a room, like, well, why is there no player union, and why is there not all this? Like, one, if an American guy in this scenario, it's not what you call him, like fucking gauging, is having to explain it to you, you've already failed. There's your job as an embedded journalist in Korea. And then two, crazy idea for Journalist of the Year. Do some fucking journalism. How about actually ask those questions of people who know publicly or privately, and you find out, and they tell you what you do when you find out because you think it's relevant. Tell us. Fucking tell us. Give me a fucking break, mate. Anyway, there you go. Little download for you.
So, sorry, to some of your points, they did actually start the process of this last year. So for those of you who have forgotten, they did do a bunch of shenanigans about rookies that we complained about last year. And so I think one of the things, to your point about CV Max and developing players, there are going to be in 2024 rookie development clauses, which means that basically there are 2-year extensions on a rookie player that their original team can have with certain built-in guarantees of salary increases. So effectively, now I don't like this for a lot of the reasons that you stated, because the if they're getting paid like league minimum, a 20% salary increase is not very much. And so you could be
use the same analogy. That means Prime Faker in season 3 can never earn what like an old like Rapid Star can earn, if you know what I mean.
I mean, we could make comparisons to the NFL, where obviously like a lot of these like, you know, quarterbacks who become breakout stars within their first 5 or 6 years when they're on their rookie contracts, you know, are massively underpaid. Like obviously people like Josh Allen and Mahomes were stupidly underpaid for their first few seasons, which allowed them to kind of build superstar rosters around them to take serious stabs at winning championships. And when the payday comes in, it's often hard to maintain a roster of the level that's necessary to win a Super Bowl. So I'm not arguing that people should be underpaid, but I'm just saying there are parallels into other sports about rookie contracts and rookie clauses. But the rookie development clause was intended because what was happening was that teams would develop these players and then they would leave the roster or leave for another region, which obviously is their prerogative in order to get more money. But it was very difficult for them to, you know, for teams to maintain the players they had developed. And for example, Guangdong Freaks, who has CV Max right now, that becomes a big deal because Guangdong is developing these players. Guangdong is looking better. kind of week after week that these players are performing within the LCK, and potentially they might want to hold this roster together at a lower price point, for at least a couple years into the future.
By the way, when they say that, though, that's again, we're right in the Korean paradigm, and you must accept all their premises for that to make sense. By the way, if you accept all of someone's starting premises, as long as they're not mental, what they say will logically make sense usually. Yep. So here's the problem with that. That word there, developed, has just done so much heavy lifting and so many assumptions are baked into it. So now every player who joins an LCK team and just plays for them for a year, Monte, actually the reason they're really good now is because they were developed by playing on that team. Like, there's teams with trash coaches. There's teams that don't even understand your role. There's teams that inhibit you. Sometimes you play worse in teams, but no, that will all be counted as you being developed. Like, basically, I'll use the same analogy. It turns out, guys, that it wasn't actually that Faker was the GOAT right out the gate in Season 3. He was developed by Korma. Korma developed Faker's ability. Therefore, Korma should get to... Like, what are you talking? You know what I mean? Like, this is the same thing again. Only Koreans would think that way, where essentially, if you don't know how companies work in Korea, your boss just by default takes credit for everything you did because he's your boss and he told you to do it. Like, there's never any individualism of like, you were a genius and an outsider and a thinker. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Your boss did it all. So I don't hate it all because, again, if you ask what the outcome is, if the idea is, this is why you would essentially like gamble on younger talent and potentially give them a chance, is because then you get like more on the back end. What's happening is essentially more people might get a contract, which means they get into the league, but it's just that essentially what will cost them is it'll take them longer to get the star money potentially because you develop them in your org. And it also means in theory, you won't just pointlessly sign like semi-washed players for higher amounts. Like it might actually increase turnover of good players. So there's good and bad to it. Just as usual, it's all portrayed as just good for everyone. I mean, I was pointing out on Four Horsemen, there's no such thing as good for everyone, is there?
I was pretty. This happened a year ago, by the way, almost exactly, that this announcement was made about the rookie stuff.
We talked about it on Insight.
Yeah, we talked about it on Insight. Talked about the Monte Wolf show. I was pretty against this because I think it unfairly caps the rookie salaries, right? And there's also
this, Monte, in sports, if you did join when you're 19, those first 3 years, it's unlikely that you're actually Patrick Holmes. That's a very rare example.
Sure.
The problem in esports is you absolutely can be your absolute peak in the first 2 years. It's very easy. A career is too short. So I almost feel like the scale is what's off with that. If it was like it only applied like to a split or the first 2 split, something like that, maybe that's okay. But I feel like the problem is they're treating it like it is. You're going to play 20 years in the NHL or something,
Yeah, and the other issue too is that there is basically a right of first refusal as well. So a team can kind of designate a franchise. This is from last year, guys. This is not new information, but a team can designate basically a franchise player every year that is going to be a free agent. And when they go into the market, the team that currently has a contract with them has the chance to basically have a right of first refusal. So as they're going around and shopping for offers, the team... So like if Faker at the end of this year goes around and shops for offers, T1 could designate him, and then he could come back and say, look, I have this contract offer from this team in China, and T1 could say, okay, well, we now have a chance to match this offer. And if that player decides to leave, the team they go to has to pay a transfer fee. So it's basically holding players hostage. I mean, I don't know how else to say this. Like there is a hostage negotiation happening, and you have to pay out the hostage fee if you're a team. And this also counts if they're moving regions. So Chinese teams, NA teams would have to pay the original team in order to take the designated player away.
Which again, like, first of all, they had something just as worse than this in StarCraft. In StarCraft, you actually had to like do something mad, like pay the original salary and then like what you were going to offer the person in order to get like Jaedong to join your team, because Jaedong was the famous one when Hwasong Oz died or whatever. So like there's been some ridiculous ones like that. So this is also just the Korean way of doing it. It's essentially, without saying it, they treat it like, right, I found him, so everything he did's mine and I own him. So if you want my chattel, you have to pay me for it.
Exactly.
So, but you just need a free contract. There is no such thing as a free contract. Give me a break.
And it's just a team designating this player in this fashion, right? And so let's just provide an example for you guys of how this might work. So Faker goes away and he says, I'm going to test the market. And he gets a $5 million offer from a Chinese team. He has to then take that offer back if he's been designated by T1. T1 says, okay, we'll pay you $5 million. Now, Faker can leave T1, but the Chinese team that wants him will then have to pay a percentage. I believe it's a percentage of the contract as a transfer fee. So it effectively gives a competitive advantage to T1 in order to keep the player, because they will pay less for his services than the exterior team will. And if he leaves, they actually just get paid straight up cash for him leaving the team, as long as they're making a competitive offer for him.
Also, think about what they were building in when that deal was done, before maybe all the salary caps came in. What they were doing there, Monty, is the crazier your offer, the more I make. So actually, even though it should fuck me that you come in like Saudi in football and go, I'll pay you 20 times more. Oh, go for it. You might be paying me 2 million then, just for getting the player that is not even my player anymore. You know, like that's essentially what you're doing there. You're sort of actually making it that if China did do the 20 million for Faker, you will get even more percentage of it, because the percent will be at that, but it'll scale up on it. You'll get way higher amounts, even though you did nothing. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.